Okay. Okay, I don't know if we are. Okay. Just waiting to see me pop up again. Come on. Oh, okay. Now it says I am perfect. I have no drop frames. It's running perfectly now. Pure green. Alright. We seem to be fine now, so let's start from the top and watch the video again. And with no, and we'll be more in sync as opposed to just it wasn't happening, guys. But we're fixed now, so let's continue the lesson. I am so sorry for all of these issues. I'm trying my best, but we'll get through it. We're gonna make a game. Let's find out how. Let's do it. Here we go.
Welcome to the lab, where you'll be working on your personal project. Now, personal projects are designed for you to work on your own with less instruction. So it's a chance to create a project that you really care about and can be really creative with to make whatever you want. They're a great opportunity to apply and solidify the skills that you learned in the lessons and in the challenges. Let's take a look at my personal project. So we've created this endless running game where we have a deer being chased by different animals and obstacles like rocks. Our screen scrolls endlessly, and the whole objective is to last as long as possible, collecting different hearts and trying to stay alive. And then we can even restart our game to try again. Now, these personal projects are designed to be built on top of all of the different things that you learn from each individual unit and each individual challenge. Consider Prototype 1, where we learned how to create our first project, and we really get to learn a lot about player input that we then apply into our challenge. And so we can have our player move this vehicle around using the arrow keys to turn and to move forwards and backwards. In our second prototype, we'll get to learn about the basic gameplay to be able to create all of these animals that spawn down the scene. We even get to learn about how we can spawn obstacles and projectiles based on the player's input, and learning a little bit about collisions along the way. In our third prototype, we take our projects a little bit further using sound effects and animations to make our games really cool. Look at that jumping animation. This farmer's so excited, running through the forest, and then we can collide with these different obstacles, create this huge puff of smoke. In our fourth prototype, we'll get to learn about the different gameplay mechanics, the power-ups, increasing difficulty, so we need to avoid these enemy spheres coming at us and stay alive. Get these power-ups so that we can bump them away if we need to, and then eventually make the power-up go away, until finally we can bring all of these different parts together to be able to make a full game with really cool effects, with nice user interface to be able to set difficulty states, interact with different objects, accumulate score, and even lose the game. Now, the goal of our personal projects is all focused on two things: the completeness of our game, so how much of what we actually Completed is what we intended to finish, and then the creative or applicable ways that we made our game. So, how much new things did we learn or add to our game to either work really well or look really nice? And then, did we apply the skills that we learned to be able to make something that's our own? Now, these two things are always in constant balance of each other, and so at some point, you have to decide when your game is exactly what you wanted it to be, but also, is it good enough to share with other people? So, taking a look at what I set out to do with my own personal project, I have this handy design document that helps to outline the different minimal things that I'm trying to complete, known as a minimum viable product. Now, at the end of the day, my game definitely could use a lot more work, but to see where we started off with, I wanted to create a game where the player could control a deer in a top down style game using the arrow keys to move the player in a bunch of directions around the screen. For my gameplay, I wanted animals and obstacles to appear from the top of the screen, and the goal of the game was to avoid crashing into the different rocks or being eaten by foxes and getting bit. For the sound and effects, I wanted sound effects to happen when I bumped into other animals, if I crashed into a rock, or if I got bitten by a fox. For the particle effects, I wanted them to pop up whenever I crashed into a rock. And then I wanted to hopefully get a scrolling background to make it look like all the animals are running really quickly. For the gameplay and the mechanics of my game, I wanted the game to progress whenever waves of foxes bit the player and attempted to attack, so that it made the game a bit more difficult to stay alive. I also wanted to put in hearts that appeared so that the player could regain their health back. In terms of what I wanted the user to experience, I wanted their lives to decrease whenever they were hit by a rock or bitten by a fox. And then at the start of the game, we'd have our "Oh dear" title screen that would appear, and our game would end when the player ran out of lives. There's even other additional features, which is the point where you can kind of stretch your ideas and your imagination to see what you can do. And so, some features that I wanted to add so people would bounce off of larger animals, making it harder to control the player and avoid all the obstacles that are in our game. Now, with this minimum viable product that I wanted to complete, in the design document that we provide, there will be a timeline to help outline the things that you want to accomplish every day, every week, with the different features that you want to add to your game. So you can see in my outline, I wanted to set up my camera, and then I wanted to move the player, and then I wanted objects to spawn randomly. I added in some collisions. Eventually, I moved away from just having these primitive spheres and cubes on the scene, and I replaced them with some actual assets that I could use to make my game feel a little bit cooler. After that, I added in some of the different gameplay pieces like health and game over. After that, I polished my game up a little bit more, adding in some of those particle and sound effects, that scrolling background, and that music. And then, if I was able to, I would add in different power up objects to make the player jump or to save the high scores of all my different players. So, you're trying to get to a point with your project where your game will have just enough to be fun and be enjoyable, but also give you opportunities to get feedback from other people, like your friends or your family, your teachers, your classmates, so that you can further develop this cool little project you've made and make it even better. At the end of the day, you're not trying to create the best or the flashiest project, you're just trying to make something that works really well and feels really nice to the people playing it. Now, one major thing to note for this project, there will be a lot of temptation to really go above and beyond with this project, make it look incredibly amazing, but that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to be able to do. So don't go and try and make the biggest or the best game out of your different projects, because for now, this is just the first project. So try and stick to what you're learning, apply what you've learned in this project, and develop something that you can feel proud about at the end of the day. The only real limitation with this project is the amount of time that you have, and with enough time you could make an absolutely amazing game, but with the short amount of time that you have to create this project, make it as good as possible with the time that you have, and walk away from it feeling proud. With that, we'll move on to the next step.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. Uh, yeah, I know most people would be like, they would pause and talk over or speak through what they while they're watching it, my brain doesn't work like that. I ponder and I need to. I don't like try to come up with ideas when I'm in mid lesson. So I really don't like uh I really don't have too many thoughts while I'm learning something. Like when it's all said and done, like now I can share my thoughts because I now get a full view of what I'm of what's going to happen, and thus I can uh, get my thoughts together. But I'm not gonna lie, I a lot of these things I again I can see why we're doing it this early now. I get it, especially as we're moving on. This is it's a little bit more thorough than I was thinking. But I get it. I dig it. Let's move on to the next lesson. Oh boy, I actually have a lot of work to do. This is actually again, I'm very excited. All right, so let's see what the next one is. Review design doc examples. Oh boy, this one's probably gonna be chunky. Uh, Now that we have some idea, 1 second. Boom. Now that we have some idea what a personal project is, let's look at. I think it's supposed to be look at a couple examples, but let's look a couple examples. Thank you, Unity. Knowing that you fuck up too makes me feel the much better. Let's look a couple examples. Yes, sir. Let's do it. It's a me. We already got it. Got the Word and the PDF. Think through how you would fill out a design doc for other games. Okay, let's see what we have to offer here. Hold on. And muting.
Now we have an idea of what we're going to accomplish with our personal project, and now I'm going to walk you through some of the tools that we have so that you can turn your idea into a reality. So I went over the example design document before of the project that I made myself that highlights all of the different aspects of my project.
Now, you can find a link to the example design document below this video.
And now you can see in the design document that I downloaded, it has all of this different information that I can use to figure out what information I need to create my game. Different things like the perspective of my player control, user input, the goal of the game, special effects and animation, additional gameplay mechanics. So this design document is very helpful as we structure our game throughout this process. In fact, one of the best ways that we can use this design document, and especially the project concept section, is by using this to actually break down the different mechanics of other games that we play. So whether it's a game you play on your phone or a game that you play on your console or computer, this can be a really great way that we can actually take a look at some other games that people have made, break down the ways that they've created their game to get an idea of how we actually want to create our game ourselves. It's particularly useful that this document enables us to break out the different aspects of player control, the basic gameplay, the sound and effects, the actual mechanics of our game, the user interface, and any other additional features that were added to a game afterwards. So the easiest way that we can use this document for right now is by taking a look at different examples. Let's take a look at this UFO game, for example. So, if we look at the player control, we have another top-down style game. Our player can move with the arrow keys, can actually charge a beam and activate it to pick up all of these cows. It looks like in the game we have the cows that we're trying to pick up. We have these helicopters that we're trying to avoid. And And the goal is to pick up as many cows as possible without getting hit by one of the helicopters. For the sound and effects, you can hear the cows moo when they're picked up. You can hear the blip sounds happening from the helicopters. Fire or projectile. There's a sound for when we click to pick up the cows. There's even some cool background music.